you're in District 36 right now. You may not all live in my district, but I'm really glad that you're here today. District 36 covers almost all of Apex, part of Holly Springs, and a little bit of Southern Cary. And this area, as we know, is one of the fastest growing in North Carolina probably, and then definitely in Wake County. And the one thing that I hear, the one question I hear probably the most from people that email me or call my office is questions about roads and what's going on with the roads, what's going on with 540, what's going on with, the road outside of school, what's going on with a road. 1010 road is what I get most questions about because it runs right through the middle of my district. So after my assistant, Josh, who's sitting back there, he fields most of these questions, but I was just thinking, what we should do this town hall to just kind of educate people about the connection between what the state does and what local governments do, because it's really complicated. I don't even understand it sometimes, and I'm gonna learn a lot today from all these experts that are here to talk about what the town of Holly Springs does, what the town of Apex does, and also what NCDOT does. Because they all work together in order to make our area as easy to get around as possible. And I know even just getting here tonight from Apex, there is a lot of traffic going up, Old 55. So I think anytime any of us tries to get around our area, we encounter these issues. And of course, we're under a lot of construction right now. So I was just wanting to open with this really funny cartoon that one of my constituents, Rick, sent to me. Rick, when was this published?
94 is
1994.
It was at the time where they were building 40 between Greensboro and Charlotte, and it took 30 years to do that.
Okay, so this was, how long? 30 years ago, I guess? 1994. Yikes. And it's still this way, right? I mean, our state mineral is asphalt, state animal is the barriers, and all the state motto is single lane next 4.5 miles. And I'm sure that could be like the Holly Springs motto right now. Single lane next, this how many distance. So I just thought it was really funny that things haven't changed too much in 30 years. We're still just building like crazy in North Carolina, and it's probably going to continue that way for quite a long time. So I just wanted to give a little introduction, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about what the legislature does in what we do at the General Assembly, and then I'm going to turn it over to all these great experts, and they're going to talk about how they make decisions about what roads are built around our area, and then talk a little bit about what the current projects and the status of all those current projects are right now, and then we'll wrap up with just some Q&A. Some people pre-submitted questions to me ahead of time, so we'll answer those, and then if we have time, take other questions from the audience. So if you have questions as we're going along, if you could save them to the end so we could get through all the presentation, that would be great. Because they put some really great slides together, and I want to make sure that we get through all of those. So this is our panel tonight. They're all really incredible experts. And can everyone see? I could turn the lights off, but then it's either bright or dark, so I don't know. Can you see this okay? Okay, good. Sure. You're good? Okay. So these are all of our experts tonight. We have Brandon Jones from NCDOT, if you just want to raise your hand. And then from the town of Apex, there's Shannon Cox and Russell Dalton, who are here. And from the town of Holly Springs, we have Aaron Levitt, Michael, is it Leonis? Yeah. Oh, he's not here, I'm sorry. Chris, right? Yeah. And then, is Tim here? Okay, he's back there. Okay. So, you're supposed to be up here. So we have lots of great people. We have more people from the town of Holly Springs that are here to answer questions. So, and then of course I want to acknowledge Mayor Mievsky from the town of Holly Springs, who's here. And then we have Danny Dries, Chris DeShazer, here you are, and Danielle, oh my God, I'm Hewitson. I don't know why I just blanked on your last name. Hewitson from the town of Holly Springs Town Council, and then Terry Mahaffey from town of Apex Town Council. And Chris and Terry are going to speak briefly about what the town councils do and what their role is in transportation. So much. And then, I think Bruce left, but I wanted to, before he left, I wanted to give him a huge thank. Bruce Friend, who's the head of school here at Pine Springs, offered me this space to have this event, so they've been really great, so I wanted to give him a thanks. There you go. So I want to talk a little bit about what the legislature does with transportation. So the legislature has two primary roles when it comes to transportation in the state. So first of all, we set the legislative mandate, meaning that we kind of set the rules of the game for what the North Carolina DOT is going to do. And so, there he is. Bruce, I just gave you a shout out. Thank you so much for having us tonight. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for being here.
So the legislature, basically, they set the rules of the game. So we do appropriations, of course. We're the one that sets the state budget. But the main thing that we do is the rules around what's called the Strategic Transportation Investment Law, or we sometimes call it STIP. So the Strategic Investment, or that's a mouthful. Strategic Transportation Investment Plan, right, Brendan?
So the STI law is how it gets funded and programmed, and then the STIP is the State Transportation Improvement Program, 10-year program.
Okay, yeah. So we create the law, basically, that is how the STIP is implemented, and the STIP is basically how the DOT, and I think you're gonna talk about this, right, about how they make the decisions about the priority of projects, basically. So we also set a lot of laws around zoning, jurisdiction, regulation, and building codes. So North Carolina our legislature has a lot of control over what local governments can do. We're what's called a Dillon Rule state, meaning the legislature can basically tell the town council, like, you can do this, but you can't do this. We set a lot of laws around, tree canopies and all kinds of wastewater and all kinds of different things. So we have a lot, and I actually sit on the local government committee in the House. So we hear all those bills that come through that basically either limit town councils of what they can do or expand what they can do. And then we also we do give approval to specific projects, grants, exemptions. So, for example, in the state budget, there might be special grant money for different projects around the state. I think last year we actually appropriated some money for like a parking garage in Raleigh or something. So sometimes we do appropriate individual project money to specific projects. And then we're also in charge of oversight. So we're responsible for receiving, reviewing NCDOT recommendations, progress reports, and strategic planning. Meaning, we have oversight committees, we have a transportation committee in the House and the Senate. I don't sit on those committees, but they're responsible for receiving different reports from NCDOT to kind of oversee what they're doing. So I will say that the STI law that I mentioned, the Strategic Transportation Investment Law, right now it's heavily skewed toward awarding extra consideration specifically to highways and highway expansion projects. So unfortunately that means that these rules basically kind of severely limit the funding available for multimodal projects because the rules are skewed toward awarding that money to highway projects. So even though these multimodal projects might basically demonstrate a larger impact on reducing traffic, and a lot of times have local support, unfortunately the way that the law is written as of right now, it just skews more toward improving highways and roads, which we know is not always the best way to attack our transportation in certain areas, especially in urban areas. So the DOT is kind of hamstrung by that law, basically, over what they can improve and what they can't do. So we do have the authority as a legislature to change the STI, to establish new rules that would drive outcomes toward more sustainable and more flexible transportation grid. And I'm always in support of that. I think a lot of local and municipalities want to do more of those kind of projects. But unfortunately, like I said, because of the way that the STI is written now, it's really hard to do that. So, let's see. And then I want to do one second. scale, like I said, around this STI law. It controls how the money is spent. It sets rules for scoring candidate projects. And like I said, it funnels about 94% of the available funds to highway projects. And it contradicts sometimes. There's a multimodal investment called NC Moves 2025. I don't know if you're going to touch on that. Basically, the NCMDOT has some recommendations to do some more multimodal investments, but STI kind of conflicts with that. And so they're really not able to move forward on that project until we change the STI law. And like I said, I feel like it's out of sync with the clear popular support for multimodal investment in North Carolina. So again, this is just something the legislature, if they do want to invest more in multimodal, they're going to have to change the STI. So the other thing about the legislature and how these things are done is the unfortunate fact that our budget is pretty much written behind closed doors. It doesn't have a lot of input, especially from minority members in the legislature. It doesn't have a lot of public input. It's really written behind closed doors with a very small number of people in the legislature. And so even if, like say the town of Apex came to me and said, we want to fund, this project, we want the legislature to give a certain amount of money, especially me in the minority party, I really have no power to get that project funded because of the way our budget is written. And it's really not fair to the public because the public doesn't have a lot of input into it either. And so I just wanted to kind of call that out so you understand like how limited the ability is for other people to kind of weigh in on the budget. But I do appreciate, I think one way that the public can be involved is to come to events like this and just be more informed about how that process happens. And I think that's really important. So we're going to turn it over to Brendan now and talk a little bit about what
Sitting here doing the same thing. Should we just go? Because apparently you can't do anything.
Y'all hear me okay? All right, thank you, good seeing everybody. My name is Brandon Jones, I serve as the division engineer for Division 5 for the North Carolina Department of Transportation. With me tonight is our district engineer, he's really the one that makes things happen in Wake County, Daniel Bowler. He's the one that has day-to-day coordination with county government, local municipalities, and working out a lot of details that eventually get put on the ground. I'll give you a little bit of an overview of how DOT is organized. We have 14 different highway divisions in North Carolina. We're in Division 5. Division 5 covers 7 counties: Wake, Durham, Vance, Warren, Franklin, Rainbow, and Person counties. We have over 6,600 miles of roadway that we're responsible for in these 7 counties. We have obviously RDU and 3 other regional airports. Important to our community, 3 rail stations for Amtrak, and Turnpike Authority has been operating in Wake and Durham counties now for over 10 years. We have, just in our division from an employee standpoint, we have 541 positions. Just like everybody else, we do have a workforce issue. We have had that since before COVID in this area because of competition in the workforce in the urban areas. We're at 28% vacancy. About 2 years ago, that was 38%. So we've worked really hard to bring that vacancy rate down. We still have a lot of work to do. So just a couple of fun facts. North Carolina does not have a county-maintained road system. Roads are either private, they're public maintained, they're public maintained by municipality or by Parks Department, but mostly by NCDOT. So Division 5 has more road miles we're responsible for than the states mentioned. Wake County alone, which is by far the largest road system in the state of North Carolina from a state maintained standpoint, has a larger road network than Hawaii, Rhode Island, and New Jersey. That's from a state maintained perspective. Typical road ownership, I mentioned earlier, you have public maintained, it's either state or municipality, some parks land. You may have a public right-of-way on a road, but nobody maintains it. You have a new subdivision that's built, especially out in the county area, It may have been built and constructed, people living on it, but it hasn't been turned over for maintenance to anybody yet. Or you have private rights of way. How can you tell if a road is state maintained? Back in 2019, a session law was passed that required NCDOT to set up a map, database map, that's the link to it. I don't know if we're going to share the slides with people that are here, but you might could view the video and get this link. If you go on this link, it only tells you if the road is DOT maintained. We don't keep a database of all the municipal roadways or private roadways. So if it's not shown on that map as a DOT maintained roadway, then you say, okay, is it within a municipality's limits? Contact the municipality and see if it's their maintenance. If it's out in the county, and it's not showing up as us maintaining it, that means there's probably nobody maintaining that roadway. Here's how DOT is funded. So a lot of people say federal funds. The federal funds really only make up 25% of overall funding, 75% is state funded. Think about, there's two different funds, a highway fund, think about that as our maintenance program, and then the trust fund, think about that as our capital program, the one that builds the big projects around the area. We are heavily reliant on both, 50% from a state funding standpoint, 70% from a federal funding standpoint, heavily reliant on motor fuel stacks. Now, we don't see that as a good way to continue with revenue in the future. As you have more fuel efficient vehicles, as you have more EVs coming on the market, we see that going down. So we are working with our legislative partners, and every state across the country is facing this, to figure out other sources of revenue to keep DOTs going. How a road gets built. So this is a very lengthy process. And I want to kind of distinguish a couple of different projects here. You know, you've got like an I-40 widening, or some big projects we have going on in this area, 540, I-40 widening, the Beltline work. Big projects like that, from a planning standpoint to a delivery standpoint, can take a couple of decades to put on the ground. Then you have some smaller projects that we're always coordinating with the towns on as far as spot locations. And we'll get to that in a minute. That's a little bit easier to deliver, quicker to deliver, but funding is still an issue. So it starts with long-range planning. Those plans, like in this area, I'll touch base about our capital area metropolitan planning organization. They, every 5 years, they put out what's called a metropolitan transportation plan. It's a fiscally constrained plan based on projected revenues for the area. We are currently in a 2050 plan. So they've projected out what would be built based on revenue forecast to the year 2050. They are starting to work on the 2055 MTP as we speak. So it kind of starts in these areas with the MTP, what's showing up on that plan. Then it goes through a prioritization system, which is part of the STI law. And then it goes into the project gets funded. We start developing the project, doing the engineering, doing the environmental work on the project, which goes into project planning. That could take, depending on the size of the project, 2 to 4 years just to go through the environmental process. Project planning and design can take another couple of years before you're ready to go to right-of-way, purchase right-of-way, and move utilities. And right-of-way utilities on a typical large project is 2 to 4 years before you can go to construction. So you can see, even when we have a project funded, all the hoops we have to go through to get it to just being able to let can be a decade-long process. And it takes 2 to 5 years to build a lot of large projects. 2 years would be very quick in this area, maintaining traffic. And then once it's completed, we maintain and operate the facility. So every territory in the state is either part of a metropolitan planning organization or a rural planning organization. So all of Wake County is part of capital area MPO. So the MPO is made up of the jurisdictions within the county, all the municipalities, the county government, and it extends beyond the Wake County limits, but they have technical staff on a technical committee, and then the executive board for the capital area MPO is made up typically of elected officials. They have a big role in determining what roads might be eligible for prioritization. They as well as myself can submit projects through our prioritization process. STI law was created in 2013. So real quick, show of hands, how many of you have lived your whole life in Wick County? You're the only one. I've got you beat. I'm 52 years in Wick County.
You got a few more years over.
I'm 52 years in Wick County. So, anybody been here more than 25 years? Okay, now we got a few more then. So before STI law was created in 2013, the way projects would get funded in our 10-year STIP program was called the equity formula. I won't go into the detail of the equity formula, but in urban areas we always called it the inequity formula. We didn't feel like we really got a fair share. STI law changed that, but as we've seen over the last several years, with increased project costs, we continue to need more funding feeding that system. And it's not a perfect system. This is a system that's set up to work across the state, and different areas have different needs. So part of how STI operates, and we're working on the 2026 to 2035 STIP that should be approved next June. So in the process of scoring projects and things like that. So if you think about the 10-year programs, that's a $37 billion program projected. Now we take inflation off the top. Our board's currently trying to figure out what that inflation number looks like for the next STIP. We want it to be realistic. We don't want unrealistic inflation numbers, because then you over-program, which was what we dealt with over the past several years. But you have three different primary categories in the STI budget. You have a statewide mobility, which is 40% of that $37 billion. 30% goes to the regional areas, and 30% to each division. Going back to that map of 14 divisions across the state. The statewide mobility is, there's only certain roads eligible for those funds. If you think about interstates, major US routes, you know, your SR 1010 doesn't qualify for statewide funding. But these projects are submitted, and they compete against other projects across the state in that same category. It's 100% data driven. There's no local input points, as I'll explain in a minute, at the statewide level. But it is limited. Okay, so when we throw in a project for like I-40 widening or US 1 widening, it first competes at the statewide level. The regional level, every division is paired with another division, and that's a region. So this division is paired with Division 6, which is Fayetteville area. So projects that we have, and interstate projects eligible for this, but it's all other US and NC routes are eligible for the regional level. But they compete not at the statewide level, but with that other division. So inside of Division 5, inside of Division 6, those projects compete. In this, you'll see other modes come into play with aviation, public transportation, our ferry division we don't have to deal with here, rail, other classes of railroad come into play at the regional level. At the statewide level, you're really talking about your RDUs, your Charlottes, your PTIs, and your Class 1 railroads. Then you get to the division needs. Now is when the secondary system comes into play. So a problem in a county like Lake County, we've had so much development over the years in the county, right, that our secondary system has taken a beating. It has taken a beating. But there's not a real good way to fund a major secondary road improvement project, because they only compete at the division needs level. And there you can see, this is where bike ped comes into play as well. So here's the 22 different funding buckets across the state, the statewide, the 7 regions, and the 14 different divisions. And each one of those funding buckets, I told you, the inflation comes off the top first, and then there's other programs that we fund in each one of those funding categories. For instance, interstate maintenance comes out of the statewide mobility. So if we have to do, like we're doing on I-40 in Cary right now, where we had to rip off that surface, fix the underlying concrete, and put a surface back on top of it, that comes out of interstate maintenance funding, out of statewide mobility. Some bridge replacements, some bridge rehabs, and some highway safety projects needs as well, bridge projects, safety projects. And then that division needs, you throw in what's called the MPO direct attributable. And you'll hear that referred to in a little while as LAP funds. So the MPO, in this case Campo, gets about $25 million a year that they set up their own priorities for road projects. And whether it's highway projects, multimodal bike path projects, they have the authority to decide where that money goes. Economic development hits the division needs as well, which has become a major issue as of late. So our scoring process, like I said, it starts with the long-range planning. Projects can be submitted. We can't submit as many projects as we want to. We are limited. I have a limited number I can submit, and the MPO has a limited number they can submit every STIP cycle. It goes through a review, a data-driven quantitative scoring process that's currently taking place right now. Then the first thing that comes out is the statewide projects. We should see those in June. If a project doesn't make the cut at statewide, it can cascade down and compete at the next level. So if I have a US 1 widening project that didn't compete very well with other projects across the state, it can cascade down and then compete for regional funding between Division 5 projects and Division 6 projects. And if it doesn't make that funding, it can cascade down and compete at the division needs level. So you could theoretically fund a US 1 widening project from the division needs level, but it's probably not something we would do. Also, when you get to the regional and division needs, you look at the bottom, you see the quantitative score goes from 100% at the statewide mobility level, which means it's 100% data driven. But at the regional and division needs, you start having what's called local input points. I can put additional points on projects, and the planning organization can put additional points on projects to make up the total points that project receives. We are currently in our 2024 to 2033 STIP, so the project schedules I share with you tonight is based on that current STIP. Each prioritization cycle has a number, so we are working on prioritization 7.0, which will develop the 26 to 2035 STIP. And like I said, we should have the programming finished later this year with a draft STIP coming out in January of 2025 for ultimate approval by the Board of Transportation in the summer of 2025. Okay. That's kind of our big capital program and how that works, and how projects get submitted for that capital program. I'm going to talk about some alternate funding that we have. These are for smaller projects, spot type projects. Think about intersection improvement, a turn lane, a signal, things like that are eligible for these type of projects, but they're all competitive. You can't just say, hey, I've got a need there, I'm going to go do it. You have a need there, you have to submit it for funding, and it competes against other projects. Generate a benefit cost score for the project. So we have spot safety, which are state funds. We have highway safety and improvement program, which are federal funds, which does require a 10% match from the state, but we can do with the larger projects with the federal funds. And we have spot mobility, so it's not necessarily based on safety data. It's based on just relieving a little bit of congestion. Talk about schools for a minute. So when a school comes in and comes to us and says, hey, we want to put a school in this location. Daniel takes over at that point and works with that school to do a traffic impact analysis, TIA. So it says what improvements the school needs to do. Now, we ultimately decide, working with locals, what those improvements are. A law was passed a few years ago that says, okay, if you require certain improvements, DOT, you're paying for those improvements. That comes out of some of these funds that could be used to do other things. And in Wake County, with all the schools that we have going on being constructed, it's a large sum of money. Traffic signals. Every time there's an issue at an intersection or back up there, everybody says, hey, give me a signal. Signal's going to work. Well, maybe. Not always, right? We do follow the manual of uniform traffic control. For a signal to even be considered for funding, it's got to meet a signal warrant. So counts are taken and things like that to see if it would meet a signal warrant. If it does, and we think that a signal will correct the issues that are taking place out there, we can submit that location for funding. But once again, it competes with other intersections in the area across the state. So traffic signals each intersection goes through a detailed engineering evaluation. Signal's not always required just because it meets a warrant. We really got to figure out what's going on at the intersection. There might be other things we can do. Funding opportunities, spot safety, HSIP, spot mobility. Traffic signals do generate other crashes, rear ends. So if we funded a signal today for a particular intersection, we're over a year before that signal gets put on the ground. It has to go through an engineered design, materials have to be ordered, contractor has to be scheduled. It's not quick. All right, with that, I turn it over to Tyler Mayfax.
Okay, yeah, maybe I'll have Terry come up real quick before the town starts and just, briefly talk about, what the town council does and then maybe the Apex staff.
So, I brought a prop, and this is our,
Not if it fits.
sorry, I know you can't see, this is our transportation and collector street plan that the town of Apex publishes. And I'll leave it over there, you can look at it later if you want. But what this is for the entire area under Apex jurisdiction, our staff and the town's approved a map of where the eventual streets will go, what type of street they'll be, and things of that nature. So this map is published, and as development occurs, private developers will have to build to this map. So this is what has to get done. This is the approved plan by the town. Now, how do the projects here actually happen, I think is the question. If you look at this plan closely, you'll see there's streets that are existing, and there's these dotted lines that the ones have to come. That's the stuff that'll get built eventually. And I think I'll say there's two main ways that a road can get built in Apex. Either it's privately provided by a developer as part of a project, or it's a public project that we do. The private stuff, the town council's involved, and we're the ones that have to ultimately approve the project or not. And there's a little bit of negotiation there about what exactly gets built. Sometimes the plan is modified, or staff looks at it. You know, a lot of times when you get a project, you're able to look at an area in more detail than maybe was looked at when the development plan. And let's say, oh, maybe the road has to be here, maybe the road has to be bigger or smaller or slightly different or whatever. So, and the town council ultimately is the one that signs off on the final project and the associated road improvements from the developer that we're able to require. Typically, the stuff we can require is only on site, like what is in their parcel or adjacent to their parcel or frontage. We can have them approved. Sometimes, well, we do the traffic analysis that DOT does as well, and if that will indicate that a light is needed somewhere, some other offsite improvements, we can often try to require those as well as part of a project. So that's probably the major way that most of the stuff gets built, because as you know, development Apex has been, going to put it down for you, so you can see everyone at a pretty quick pace. So the other way is public projects. So we're doing our budget now, so it's a good time to talk about this. So certain projects here, improvements that are needed, that are not in an area that will ever develop, or rather are in an area maybe that's already developed, isn't likely to redevelop soon, are only ever going to be provided with the town of Apex, or DOT or someone else steps up and runs a check for it. Those projects we have what we call a CIP in Apex. It's our capital improvement plan, sort of backlog of all of our potential projects here and some other ones. And every year we go through a prioritization exercise where the town council will fill out a survey, and each member of the council will say, this is what I think is important. The staff fills out the survey as well. We do a public survey to see what the needs are out there. And as part of the budget process, our budget writers bring it all together with a final prioritization of what is important to do in this next year. And that final priority will then look at what funding's available in the budget. And ultimately, the output of that is I think it's a 7-year CIP plan showing kind of a Gantt chart of what we need each year, how much money we need, and what we get done. And that's sort of the way we decide what projects get done. Town council ultimately will approve the budget, and that's the plan for that year to build projects ideally in that year. Funding is a separate question. There's a couple different funding sources. For the smaller stuff, we might do what we call pay-go, where town of Apex, out of your tax dollars, will just collect property tax and we're able to do a small intersection or something like that. For For some of the larger projects, the town might need to float a bond, a transportation bond of some sort, or we'll go to the voters and say, hey, we want to borrow $25 million or $30 million or $100 million or whatever, and that'll fund a set of those projects. Typically, we'll advertise to everyone, you know, these are the projects we want to do on our plan. If you approve this bond, we'll go build this stuff. What do you think? And there's also funding sources, as we just heard from DOT. You know, there's go to Campo, there's you know, the LAP projects, there's maybe some federal funding, grants, whatever. There's all sorts of potential other funding sources that our staff is constantly sort of evaluating the projects to see what projects would be a good fit for Campo or from DOT or from federal funds, or in theory, you can go to the legislature, you get a separate appropriations. Never happened in Apex, as far as I know, but other towns get some more money than that. So once you have your projects, you identified your funding, you approve the budget, and that year hopefully stuff gets done and everyone's happy. One thing I want to note, kind of touch on, I saw we just heard about traffic signals. What you won't see on this plan is where all the traffic signals are going to go in the future. They're sort of, I guess the point I want to make about traffic signals is it's not as subjective a process as people think it is. You know, as a town council, we don't decide where we put a traffic signal. We don't say, okay, enough people want one here, so let's go build one. It has to be warranted, it has to be justified through a study as to what, you know, enough cars, or if there's too many accidents, or other you know, different levels that you can meet. So, traffic signals is obviously a big deal. Probably one of the biggest, if I had to sort of, a plurality of the comments I get from residents are around, can I have a traffic signal here, when's one coming? And what I do is I go, Russ, when do we have a traffic signal here? And then Russ will go, well, we did a traffic study on this date, or on this date, or we'll do one for you coming up. And the purpose of the traffic study is to see if it meets one of the warrants. And a warrant is actually, in my head, there's some really thick and complicated table in the back of some DOT manual somewhere saying you gotta have this number here, or this number here, and then you check a box and you're allowed to have the signal. So that's the first step, that's to be warranted, or else it's not gonna happen. It's not, the point I'm trying to make is not a subjective decision where the town council says, yeah, we wanna do one, or we don't wanna do one. Once it's warranted, then it's a matter of who pays for it and where they get their funding from. And or maybe it's you know, a collaboration between a private and the town, or the town and DOT, or whatever. There's that sort of negotiation that happens. My view is, you know, I would greatly prefer if DOT paid for traffic signals on DOT roads. That's my preference as a town council member. Sometimes that doesn't happen. Sometimes we say, hey, DOT, we want a traffic light here. It's warranted. Can you do it? And they're like, yeah, we'll get to it in 10 years or 15 years, or we think there's something else. So if we get a bad answer like that, then it's up to the town to decide, well, do we want to try to fund this ourselves separately from DOT? You know, if we think it should happen faster, if we have a warrant, and then we can say, okay, maybe we'll pay for it. You know, will you sign off on this and let us put a signal in, and that kind of negotiation happens. So that's kind of the overview of the process. The money has to come from somewhere.
Yeah.
Traffic signals, $250,000 or so, maybe to put them in. But before that, the bigger hurdle typically is getting that warrant, which shows that it's justified to have a signal at an intersection based on the traffic counts. And I'll say, in my experience, the traffic counts required for a warrant tend to be higher than most people in the area believe there should be a signal. Like, it tends to, you know, be higher.
What did you talk about that?
We have the traffic
There
study.
you go.
We had the traffic study.
All right, so that's what I got, and I'll answer questions later.
Okay.
And I'll put this over here.
We just need the money.
We just need.
Thanks everyone so much for coming and having input and, you know, participating. We really appreciate it. I'm gonna try to zip through my stuff because there's questions and we wanna make sure we get to that. So I'm gonna go really fast. It's not unlike what Brandon was describing, what NCDOT does. So for the town of Apex, Russell and I are here to share our process with you. And I'm gonna kind of quickly go through these topics, and then we'll follow up with our transportation projects. But you see, we're gonna talk planning and prioritization, and then road and traffic signal maintenance. So, Representative already explained home rule and Dillon rule. So Apex, North Carolina is a Dillon rule state. Apex and every other municipality only has the authority given to us by the General Assembly. So one of the important things there is we do not have authority to charge transportation impact fees. That's, you know, a common question. Why don't we have developers do more? Well,
effort between our Development Services Department and our Utilities and Infrastructure Department. So these are just some of the key players, Elizabeth Goodson, myself, Aaron Levitt, Mike Leonis, who's not here today, and then Tim Haefen. As we've kind of already talked about, North Carolina is growing pretty rapidly, third in the country, and then we are seeing that a lot of that growth is happening in Lake County. So we can see that a lot of it is also happening in our portion of Lake County, but it's also happening in northern Hardin County. And as anyone in transportation will kind of tell you, transportation is a regional issue. It's not something that Apex can handle on their own. It's not something that Holly Springs can handle on their own. And so, you know, we're seeing a lot of growth here, and those folks are traveling to Cary, they're traveling to Apex, to Holly Springs, to Raleigh, and they are using our transportation networks. So, you know, some of the congestion that we're seeing is not just from Holly Springs or Apex residents, but residents all over the region. And so, looking at this map right here, in the blue circle, you can kind of see where Holly Springs is. It might be a little hard to see, but the red lines are where we're seeing congestion that is, you know, not quite what we'd like to see. And the thicker the line, the heavier the congestion. And so, looking at 2050, if we aren't really doing much to kind of address that, it is a very thick, very red map. It is not something we want to see here. So how do we go about making those changes? Kind of like what Apex talked about, Holly Springs also has a comprehensive transportation plan. It's not showing up, but that's okay. So we use the comprehensive transportation plan in regional coordination. So we share ours with Apex. Apex shares theirs with ours. So we make sure that the roads that we have that are connected are compatible. We don't want a 4-lane road going into a 2-lane road, which we know will cause congestion, and nobody wants that. So we coordinate there. We also coordinate with CAMPO, which we brought up is the regional planning body. So we submit our CTP to them, and it gets included in the Metropolitan Transportation Plan to compete for some of that STI funding. We also use it for capital prioritization to make sure that we know what our priorities are as far as transportation for the town of Holly Springs. And then we also use it for when we get private development coming in. I've heard you talk about it a little bit, but Holly Springs also has requirements of developers when they come in and bring a project that they would have to build out to our cross-section map, which is similar to their thoroughfare plan. It shows what we'd like the future build-out of the Holly Springs transportation network to be. One thing to note is that the majority of the main roads that we have in town are NCDOT maintained, and so we partner with them to get some of those improvements done. If we were to just go ahead and build out all of the cross sections to what we would like them to be, it would take us 115 projects. That is a lot of projects, that is a lot of time, and it is also a lot of money. If we were to do that, it would cost us about $800 million, and that is the cost estimates that we had at a very high level at the time of the CTP, which was a few years back, and as I'm sure you all are all aware, costs from just a few years ago are already inadequate to how much it actually costs to build things. So fortunately, we don't have to do it ourselves. We do have partners at the state level, and then we also have partners on the private side, so that all of us together are working to build out some of the improvements that we are needing to see. When the town does do it, like I said at the beginning, it is a partnership between development services and utilities and infrastructure, and these are kind of some of the steps of getting the project from the long-range planning to actually construction and getting it opened up so that y'all can drive on those roads.
Chris, do you want to just briefly, I know you serve on CAMPO, right?
Yes.
Yeah, do you want to just briefly touch on
Sure.
what the town council does in Holly Springs and maybe your role on CAMPO?
So, hi everybody, I'm Chris Shazer, Holly Springs Town Council, with some of my colleagues here. So, a couple things I'll say. It ain't easy. Number one, it's not fast. And I'm learning that just being a few months in. A stoplight does take, when you said a year, I'm thinking 15 15 to 18 months. But the town council is doing quite a few things. Number one, we heard from the residents. The residents spoke very loudly and clearly in the survey. The number one thing that we talked about at the retreat in February is traffic. How are we going to handle that? And so we just approved, it was just approved, the strategic plan was just approved, and growth and vitality, economic development and growth vitality was the number one thing, was one of the buckets. And so our goal is to focus on traffic, focus on ways that we can do it. Now there are some really cool things, and one thing that I'll talk about very briefly, we just found out, well, our team found out a couple months back that they were inside of all the boxes for our stoplights in town. There were dial-up modems, very 1990s-ish. Well, Holly Springs has fiber, so we ran fiber to all those boxes, and now the NCDOT can actually tie in, see where there is some sort of congestion, and synchronize lights. Those are smaller things that we can do, because we can try and build roads and we can try and build them, but as you can see from what we just saw, it's going to take time, and during that time, so what are the other things that we can do? So I think, and I can't say this for every person on the council, but I think they all agree with me. For folks in Holly Springs, reach out to us, talk to us, give us your solutions. I know the folks in Wood Creek, you guys did reach out, and we partnered. And CDOT has a lot of the roads in town, but we partner, we have conversations. Our conversation just last week at Campo, and I'll get to that in a second, was literally, he said at the end of the meeting, hey, by the way, there's a closing from April 18th until May 10th, 55 bypass and 540, and it's gonna be closed from 9:30 p.m. until 5:30 a.m. And so we were asking, we said, hey, can you just let us know that in some type of notification so that we can get this information out to folks? Because this is information that people need, communication. It is a work in progress. So Campo, I'm the alternate, the mayor is actually the main man on that one, but Mayor and I do partner and go to Campo, and that's the regional for us, and we actually listen, we give back. There are grants that we have applied for and that we work with, and our staff does a really good job. Chris actually, he preps us every month for Campo. So it's a work in progress, and we're always still working. The last thing I'll say real quick, because I know on time, we have a really good process in Holly Springs, and I think before something is planned, the planning board goes through it, gives it to council, these recommendations, and we look at all of these things. Because I've had a lot of people that have already said, well, you're doing all this growth, is there a plan? There is a long-range plan. And before anything is done, and a lot of people don't, but I can tell you, if you don't know, on the website, Holly Springs that's a transparency portal. Go there. Go on the transparency portal, go in. A lot of what Terry was showing, Terry, I didn't bring props, I'm sorry. But a lot of those things, I'm a rookie mistake, but a lot of those things that Terry are talking about are on our site, on the transparency portal. And if you can't find those things, reach out. If I don't know, I'll find, these guys will definitely tell us where it is, because we want you to be able to find this information, and an informed community is a great community. So, thanks.
So before we take questions, I wanted just the three groups to just give a brief update about the projects that are going on around our area. I know everyone's always interested, like, what's 540 going to be done, and all those kind of things, and then I promise we'll get to all your questions.
Okay. We'll have plenty of time for the
Yeah.
Wood Creek community as well. Nothing happens without partnerships. We don't do a project without coordinating with our municipality partners or local partners. Nothing gets done without our partnership, without partnerships. So I really commend, when I've been working in this county for most of my 28-year career, and have seen the growth that's taken place, west of 55 in these areas, and it's just unbelievable. I really commend both Apex and Holly Springs for how they've handled that growth. It's not easy dealing with the growth that we've had. When I started my career, there was less than 500,000 people in Wake County. There's 1.15, 1.12, something like that now. Tremendous growth. All right, just to hit on a few of the major projects we have going on. Complete 540, everybody's aware of the sections we currently have under construction that we're hoping in the August time frame we'll be opening up 540. I do have another announcement. Chris mentioned the Holly Springs, so I can't leave Apex out of closures. Based on the 540 project, beginning on or around April 26th at 7 p.m. through 9 p.m. East William Street, between 55 Bypass and Old Smithfield Road. It might be really more of a Holly Springs jurisdiction there. We'll have temporary intermittent lane closures. Flaggers will be in place to direct traffic through the lane closures. After they end, East William Street between 55 Bypass and Old Smithfield Road is scheduled for temporary closure through traffic on or around April 26th at 9 p.m. through the 27th at 10 a.m. Just overnight closure. The 540 will open up from 55 where it ends currently to I-40 in August of this year. The last two sections, last two phases of 540 are under contract, which will complete the loop. We're hoping that'll be finished around 2028. That's major. One of the first things I did when I started working in 1995, I went on bridge tour on the first section of 540. So it's just a career-long project.
So this is 55 right here, and then this is all the different exits here, going through Hot Springs.
Correct.
Okay, and then he's gonna open to here, right? And all this.
Yeah. So you've got I-40 and US 70.
So this is Killer Farm, or Holly Springs Road exit.
That's Holly Springs. Yeah.
Bell's Lake Road.
Yeah.
Fayetteville Road, Old State Road, Benson Road.
Yeah, no, we'll keep it up.
Yeah,
Complete 540, probably all of y'all have gone to that page at some point in time or another. They update the webpage today with interactive maps. It's really cool. Other major projects in the area, I know this is outside the district, but I wanted to throw this in because almost everything from and up toward Raleigh comes through I-40, 440 interchange. So we are going to be revamping that interchange in a few years. We're going to change how US 1 interacts with Walnut Street and Crossroads Shopping Center. And then we're going to widen I-40 from Lake Wheeler Road to 440 as well. That's coming up in a design build let in January of 2027 current schedule. U5301, US 64 improvements through Cary and Apex from US 1 to west of Laura Duncan. Widening that corridor, creating interchanges at Laura Duncan and Lake Pond. Right now it's scheduled for a May 2030 contract let.
When you say contract elect, what does that mean? Like you're bidding it out?
Just bidding it out. Yeah, just bidding it out to begin.
Bidding it out, okay.
It just begins to work. Yeah. U2901B is NC 55, widening from US 1 to north of Auburn Chapel Road. That's scheduled for a July 2030 contract let. We do plan to break out the railroad bridge and do that ahead of time. Coordinating with the railroad during a regular widening project is very difficult and delays the project. U6217 is a series of intersections along Holly Springs Road, Perry Parkway, 1010, and Penny Road. Right now scheduled for July 2030 contract let. U5889, top priority for the town of Holly Springs, David Ferry Road widening from 55 Bypass to Asphalt Road. Currently scheduled for a January 2028 contract let. U5825 is 1010 from Apex Speedway to Kildare Farm, widening that facility. Right now, that's not scheduled for construction. That's having to recompete for the next step. But we can do some engineering work on that, so it's not like we have to start from scratch once it becomes what we call a finished project. And same thing for US 1 widening from 64 to 55. That is funded for engineering only. There's no set time frame for construction. So because of 540 being constructed in this area, part of STI law allows the area to receive what's called bonus allocation funding. So there's a series of projects that are tied to the current section of 540 that's under construction. $100 million total for these projects. And the final two phases of 540 that are under construction now, we'll get another $100 million. That money funnels to us, but Campo gets to make a decision on how that money is spent and what projects it's spent on. We coordinate with those. We're delivering those projects at the division level. So a couple in this area. We've already mentioned the Sunset Lake Road widening, HL 008D from Holly Springs Road to just past Lockley. That's scheduled for April 2025 let. And then HL 007, which is 55 in technology. We had open house for that one sometime last year, maybe last fall, right down the road from here. Major intersection improvements, also June 2025 let. Now, when we first set up these projects, and then we started developing the projects and doing cost estimate updates on the projects, that $100 million vanished pretty quick. Matter of fact, we were over programmed. We had to back off a couple of projects. We're having to pull a little bit of money from the future $100 million to cover an NC50 widening project where we're building another bridge on NC50. So when we talk about the signal at Wood Creek, we'll talk about funding. Economic development. So if you remember all that information I shared earlier in the division needs category, we have the ability to, by SDI law, to approve economic development projects. So we've got 2 in this area that we've approved over the last couple of years. We had $10 million we approved for the first phase of Fujifilm, and we also have $10 million we approved for Amgen. Okay, so these are associated with road improvements that are associated with those developments. For Fujifilm, there's an additional $3 million that was recently approved that came from what we call contingency funds. Contingency funds are funds coming to DOT, but they're approved by the Speaker of the House or the Senate Pro Tem. We're going to build a new access road for Fujifilm. We've been coordinating with the town of Holly Springs for the past couple of years. We're in a really good spot right now on moving forward with that project. What we plan to do with the $10 million we got from Amgen, we can't do everything associated with Amgen, but our number one priority is to replace the New Hill Holloman Bridge over US 1 and set that up for a future footprint. I don't think anybody else wants to tackle replacing that bridge. And finish some other design work associated with improvements. But that's our number one goal, is to get that bridge replaced to be a lot wider than it is today. There's development happening on the north side in the town of Apex as well. Couple bridge projects. Old Holly Springs Road Bridge. How many give up that one? September 2027 contract for that. We have a heavy coordination with the town on. So our bridge program, when you see these, is for replacing the existing bridge because it's a condition type of improvement, not an expansion type of improvement. Now, typically the bridge is a little bit longer or a little bit wider, but it's not. This bridge program is not meant to take a 2-lane bridge and all of a sudden it becomes a 4-lane bridge. So it's taking additional funds to convert this one to what we're planning on building is a 4-lane bridge that handles the future typical section for Old Holly Springs Road. And then US 401 bridge over Sandy Creek, August 2029 contract. I don't know why I got that on there. Locally administered projects, I will say both Apex and Holly Springs are very aggressive at going after Campo LAP dollars for projects. Apex has been very successful with receiving funding for Apex Peakway. So congratulations on receiving some major LAP dollars to move that project forward. Safety projects. Remember, all these are competitive type of projects. Heaney Olive Road at Blazing Trail Drive, that should go under contract in July. That'll be contracted with a couple of other intersections for installing signals. At this location, we'll also be installing pedestrian signals. And spot mobility, we have a project that's currently under contract. Some of the work's already taken place to install a signal at 1010 and Penny Road. We've delivered a host of projects with both spot mobility and spot safety in the area recently. Hopefully everybody's heard about the S line. We're purchasing the CSX S line from CSX. It'll become a state-owned corridor. We've received a $58 million federal grant to do 30% engineering for 162 miles of railroad corridor and 80 miles of highway corridor. So the goal here is the current CSX line, it's got a lot of curves in it, so it's got a lot of at-grade crossings. The goal is to straighten it out a little bit, allow the trains to go a little bit faster, and remove all the at-grade crossings. It will reduce the time to go from Charlotte to DC by an hour. So if you leave now from Raleigh, you have to go down to Selma and then go up to DC. In the future, you have a straight shot up from Raleigh to the Richmond area. We are coordinating heavily with the state of Virginia on these improvements. And then late last year, we received a $1 billion federal grant to build the section between Raleigh and Wake Forest. That's how much it's costing to build that section of rail between Raleigh and Wake Forest, $1 billion. Getting out of downtown Raleigh is very expensive. So stay tuned. Part of the excitement around what rail might be in this area in the future is the ability to really bring passenger rail back in a bigger way. So Town of Apex was a partner in the study that finished in July of 2023 called Transit Oriented Development. It's looked at from Sanford all the way to North Carolina on that CSX line. So basically it says, okay, if passenger rail comes back to your area, how can you set up land use in your station area, downtown area, to benefit from that? It doesn't mean that's coming, but it's a way to set that vision, set that plan. These are links to our STIP project maps, our State Transportation Improvement Program, which is an interactive spreadsheet now. Our HMIP is our maintenance plan. We have a 5-year maintenance plan that we do every year. And our Division 5 contacts, myself, my Deputy Division Engineer Tracy Herrick, and Daniel, our District Engineer. Maintenance reporting, Holt Willis is our County Maintenance Engineer that covers this area of Wake County. We like all maintenance needs to go through our Contact Us system. It gets to the right person across the state. So that's the best way to send us a pothole, a signal issue, whatever it may be, is through that Contact Us system.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Apex for the brief update.
Yes, I'll knock it out real quick. So we do have a lot of information on our website, so if you're looking for projects, quick keyword search on Apex website, either look up current projects or transportation projects. We update this monthly, so information should be timely. Brandon mentioned Blazing Trail Drive a minute ago, Huey Island Road. That traffic signal is to be let for construction this year. Apex actually started that as a local project. We studied it, found that justification, that warrant to ask NCDOT if we could pursue that project. They ended up finding safety money, which helped us out a lot. Also, Old US 1 and Friendship Road has been a hot topic in the area for a lot of traffic. Traffic has really jumped up in the past year. So we were able to study it late last year and see that it met signal warrants. Prior to that, we were already working with plans for the Summit, which is a project on the northwest corner of Holland Road and Old US 1. And we're working with an agreement with them to fund construction of left turn lanes at that intersection. So the signal is currently a discussion in progress. We've talked to NCDOT about it. It would require a split signal, so we'd have to signalize both Holland and Friendship because they're so close together, or we would have to do turn restrictions at Holland, which is less desirable. So we're still in those discussions about how that needs to be done and funding for that. We have a number of road projects. Brandon mentioned the Peakway Southwest Connector. We're preparing for construction. We've got Jesse Drive Phase 1. We're going to have an open house coming up on May 20th. So getting ready for right-of-way acquisition. We have various downtown design projects in progress in downtown Apex, including Salem Streetscape, Commerce Street, Seaboard Street improvements. We're planning to extend Justice Heights Street to the Peakway, and we also plan to widen the Peakway on the north end from Old Raleigh to Center Street. We have a number of bicycle and pedestrian projects, and I won't go through all these, but you can see in here, the ones that have the letters and numbers, those have federal funds attached. attached. The other ones are completely locally funded projects in various stages. We can come back and discuss any of these during the day if you'd like. That's it.
Thank you, Russell. Aaron Lovett, Deputy Director, Utilities and Infrastructure for Holly Springs. I will also try to make this quick. So this is some of our active transportation projects. We have Holly Springs Road East, the central portion, Main Street right turn lane, there's NC 55 right turn lane, and then some sidewalk projects, and then the signal at Avery, and Holly Meadow. We'll go into minor details here. But Holly Springs Road widening, this project is active, so we're under construction right now. We're in the thick of it, about a year and a half left. Later this summer, we should be switching traffic to the new bridge, so if you travel along that roadway. You've seen the new bridge up here, so we'll be driving on that this summer. Project's looking good, and we're hoping to be complete fall of 25. So Holly Springs Central, which is the next part of the project, is 65% done with design, and we're working on land acquisition right now. And then Holly Springs Road West, the continuation, and the final part of the Holly Springs Road widening. We're looking to design that project, to apply that design to help us leverage it to get some construction money. So that's a very typical thing the town will do to get those LAP grant funds. Main Street right turn lane, this project is going to give us some operational improvements at the intersection of Main and Holly Springs Road. We're looking at that this summer. Along with this project, we're hoping we combine the project together, maybe get some economies of scale, which is that 65 right turn lane. This adds a entire right turn lane between Avery and Main Street, provides some more capacity for those through movements, and then puts those right turn codes over to the right out of the way. Councilman Shazer mentioned our intelligent transportation system, so appreciate the council and all the support we've had on that. We're in phase 3 of this project right now. So phase 1 was connecting all the signals to fiber. If you didn't know, before the fiber connection, they would connect and talk via dial-up modem or radio wave. It was very inconsistent. So we got them tied all into our fiber network. Yeah, but one other thing I wanted to mention was the town maintains one signal on this map. So that all those red dots are signals. We just have the one that's downtown right in front of town hall. We actually work with the town of Cary to provide the maintenance for us. It's not enough to justify all the work for folks. Phase 2. So we had to install cameras at all the signals. And these cameras are actually paying off. I didn't even know we had animations going on. That's amazing. I don't know how that happened, but yeah, we're able to do traffic counts. We're able to even see near misses. So if there's pedestrian, vehicle, possible conflict, we can actually use those to get grant funds and leverage that so we can get maybe some spot mobility, spot safety funds. But this is also complete. The next step we're working on is really upgrading the signal software. And if you think about the signal timing, I'd say our current situation is we're kind of in a poncho. Think about how a poncho fits you. It fits most people, it's not very tailored. The intelligent transportation systems, we hope to engage with this, will allow us to really fine tailor our transportation system and take what we have and make it efficient. So conveying more traffic through the same intersection and just really making the system more efficient. If there's an accident in one location, maybe diverting traffic and adjusting the signal timing on those other areas, that's well within our grasp. Phase 4 would be an actual situation where we have a community signal management system, similar to the town of Cary, where we can actually do a lot more, see a lot more town employees actually operating those cameras and signal timing. We have a location in our new operations campus where we're going to be housing that team. So another way to attack the problem, we've gone airborne. So the town had last year, there was over 23,000 deliveries completed via drone. It could be 46,000 vehicles off the road. This year it was more of a testing situation, but in the future, what does that do to traffic? How does that impact? Just another angle to take. addition to these projects, the town maintains over 150 miles of town roads. So if you don't know what a town road is versus a DOT road, good rule of thumb, those that are striped, is there a yellow line? That's a good indicator, not necessarily a